Republican Congressman Ralph Abraham of Louisiana's 5th District has a lot of titles aside from being congressman. He's also been a veterinary doctor, a medical doctor, a pilot, and now he wants to add one more title, governor. Congressman Abraham, thank you for taking a little time off the campaign trail to meet with us. Tell me a little bit about what made you decide, after so many years as a congressman, you know what, I want to run for governor of Louisiana.
I'm looking at our state, and I certainly know where we can be, but we're not. We are 50th out of 50 in everything that's important. We are the only state in the nation that has lost jobs. People are taking home less money than they used to. So that's why I'm running, is to bring jobs back, get Louisiana in the winning column.
Did it give you a little bit different perspective being in D.C., being on the outside of the state, sometimes looking in? I know that you're still here, you're still in the district, you're still working with your people here, and you have your boots on the ground, but obviously getting a different perspective from outside can kind of change things. Did that have weigh into your decision at all?
Probably so, but when I see other states that have far less than we have excel where we should be excelling, yeah, it does put a different perspective on our state. And unfortunately, it's not a good one. We can be so much better.
How do you think we can be better?
Look, we've got to get jobs back. I've always said good jobs solve a lot of our problems, and that's where we're going to go. We are going to incentivize these businesses to come, stay, work, build, hire. Our tax structure, our tax rates, they're too high, they're too complicated, they're too many. So we're going to reduce taxes, and we're going to work on this infrastructure. Look, in the rural community where a lot of my constituents are, where I live when I do come home from D.C., roads and bridges are terrible. Anywhere you go in the state, they're crumbling. It floods when it rains, traffic's at a standstill, and not only can people not move, but commerce cannot move.
Talking about commerce, let's look at your background. Obviously, your perspective is maybe a little bit different than some others because you have such a deep ag background. Tell me a little bit about where you came up, your involvement in agriculture over the years.
I grew up on literally the same piece of property that I live now. And Diane and I have raised our children, and certainly our grandchildren come over and spend time with us, and we're very grateful for that. I've been honored as a Louisianan to serve this great state as a soldier, a farmer, a pilot, a veterinarian, and a medical doctor, and certainly that veterinary degree, working on those large animals, going out to those farms, going out to those ranches. I know, but a lot of people don't know, how hard of a life that is and how hard it is to make a living at it.
You're still involved in farming.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about what your son-in-law and you still grow.
Look, on the farm this year, we have cotton. We had corn last year, we've had soybeans, so we rotate those crops, and it depends on the market. Farming is tough right now. We understand the margins are very small, production costs are still very high. People tend to think that farmers have an easy life. They don't. It's very difficult, and it's very stressful.
What kind of perspective does that give you when you go and sit on the Ag Committee, but also that you would bring into the governor's mansion if elected?
Well, on the federal level, I bring that experience. I have farmed. I have grown those crops. I've ridden those tractors, and I've rode those combines. So I know the terrain, and I know the arena. And that's a good perspective, but it's a unique perspective when you're sitting on the Agricultural Committee of the United States Congress. A lot of them have no clue what actually goes on in a farming operation. Coming back on the state level, it's the same. I bring that different look as to when you look out on the field, when you look out at a herd of cattle, everybody sees what they think they see, but it's underneath that business sense, that business acumen, that wisdom, and certainly that having the wherewithal to be able to finance that operation. I know it's tough.
Talking about the finances, I know over the past few years with the budget crisis we've had here in the state, lots of folks were looking at exemptions when it comes to sales taxes. Farmers and folks involved in agriculture still have some of those very important
Yes.
tax exemptions on feed, seed, fertilizer, and inputs. As governor, what would you do whenever it comes to those exemptions?
Well, that goes back to incentivizing our businesses to stay in Louisiana. We are hemorrhaging people. We are losing businesses every day. So we do have to give them those tax incentives to, again, try to make a dollar. And if they make a dollar, try to hold on to the dollar. Right now in Louisiana, we're the worst economy in the nation. And that's hard to do. I'm going to change that.
How important to you as a farmer are those exemptions?
Critical.
What difference would that make in you being able to be involved in agriculture?
Well, critical, because we know, and I certainly know, that if those exemptions are not in place, well, that piece of equipment, that particular seed, whatever it is that we buy as agricultural people, we'd have to take maybe a second and even a third look at it, and then we may not even buy at all. So it makes a huge difference is when you put in pencil to paper, predicting, if you can, the future as to whether you can feed your family. So we've got to maintain those exemptions in place. Like any business in Louisiana, we've got to incentivize.
You talked about putting pencil to paper. It's really tough to pencil out when it comes to trucking for some of our agricultural products. You've got everything, every kind of agricultural product we grow in Louisiana in your district. What kind of difficulties are some of the people seeing with hauling logs to the mill, keeping trucking companies afloat?
Well, they're not only having major difficulty and headwinds, they are going out of business. It's this legal climate that we deal with. We see the billboards, and we know that if we don't get tort reform right in this state, which I will fix as your next governor, then they're going to continue to leave. They're going to continue to move to Mississippi, move to Texas. They're going to do anything they have to survive, but it's not going to be in Louisiana. So again, we lose good people and we lose good jobs. It's got to be fixed.
If you can draw the bridge for me between tort reform and trucking companies being able to stay in business.
Well, let's look. We've got some of the highest insurance rates in the nation, and that's because of our legal climate. We have a jury threshold that is highest in the nation. We have what we call double recovery, which allows payments to be made to two entities. And you have these, it just goes on, and you have phantom medical charges. You have all these things that stymie and literally suffocate businesses. They don't have that in other states. That's why other states are thriving and we're dead last.
What plans, you brought this up a little bit, do you have when it comes to rural infrastructure? You brought up about the bridges, roads, and let's also talk about rural broadband. What can we do on the state level, and how would you fund that?
Look, we know that our infrastructure, roads, bridges, they are our circulatory system. If you can't get fuel, if you can't get ancillary services to those business sites, the businesses are not coming. We have the money. We don't have a revenue problem in Louisiana. We have a spending problem and we have a leadership problem. We've got to prioritize, we've got to be efficient, and we've got to be smart with our money. We've got a transportation trust fund that has no accountability. It's like a piggy bank that the DOTD just dipped its hand in. That's taxpayer money. I want that brought before the legislature where they will have to be accountable.
What areas will you specifically go for first when it comes to rural infrastructure?
Roads and bridges, but to your point, to your earlier question, if we don't bring in that 4 and now we need 5G on that internet, we're way behind the curve, because without that, businesses cannot work. We live in a global economy now. It's just not a national economy. And if we can't compete as we should be able to in Louisiana, then we are pushed out of the way. We have some good programs on the federal level, but it's got to come down to the state level. And as your next governor, that again will be top priority.
When you go back to Washington and you go around your district, I know you see the issues with roads, bridges.
Yeah.
Once they're posted, grain can't cross that bridge. You run into problems there. Has your perspective changed at all touring other parts of the state and seeing the problems there outside of your district?
Well, it's everywhere. I mean, I've seen projects that have been stopped midstream that have had some funding, but this particular governor, because he has the the line item veto, didn't like a particular representative in that area and just marks it out. That is unethical, it's immoral, it's just wrong. Won't happen with me.
If elected, over the next 4 years, we talked about your rural plan. Well, let's talk about specifically agriculture.
Yeah.
What would you like to see happen agriculturally now that industrial hemp is a viable crop for the state, now that we're seeing some movement with China, them buying more grain as of today? What would be your plans for agriculture over the next 4 years?
We in Louisiana, we've got the ports, we've got the waterways, we've got the unique culture. We've got the men and women in the agricultural sector that actually know how to get that crop to that port. So we need to be global. Just like our LNG is going overseas now, everything that we grow in Louisiana, we need to have a global market for. And if we don't get there, then that is a travesty that we should never let happen.
And how would you make sure that happens?
We've got to incentivize those businesses. Look, we've got to make sure that those tax exemptions stay in place. We've got to make sure that we have that infrastructure. We have to make sure that we get this tort reform in the right light, where not only are we know the trial attorneys suing our oil and gas out of business, but now if we parlay it to the car insurance, they're suing everybody out of business. The only people making money in this state right now are trial lawyers. That's got to stop.
Let me get to this final question, and you're running against a few other people, but only two major opponents in this race, in Rispone and Governor Edwards. Tell me something, a positive quality about each of them, because I know that we see so many attack ads on TV, especially from some of the super PACs. Let's get away from the nastiness and let's see what common ground we have here.
Well, I think Mr. Rispone is probably a good businessman. He's got a big company, so I'll certainly say he's a good businessman until I know different. The governor, I think he truly believes in what he wants as far as bigger government, but that is a huge difference between he and I. I want more money in my constituents and Louisianians' pocket. He wants more money in state government, and that's just a dichotomy that we will never get together with.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time to get together with us, Congressman Abraham.
All right, thank you for having me.
We have reached out to the campaign of Eddie Rispone and have yet to hear anything back from them as far as getting an interview. But we want to make sure that you still know this candidate in case you want to give him your vote. Eddie Rispone made his career in construction. He and his brother Jerry founded ISC Constructors back in 1989. They grew that business to an approximate $350 million annual impact, employing more than 3,000 families. Now, Eddie Rispone has mostly self-funded his campaign and continues to make major media buys. And there are a lot of folks who really say that having a businessman lead the state would be a good thing. Go to our website at twilatv.org or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find these interviews posted on Facebook and Twitter. We might have a few pictures on Instagram as well. For all of us here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, thank you, and please go out and vote.